activities that I have been involved with, we moved from Ohio 4.5 years ago, and I was active in the league there, and transferred my membership obviously to the one here. I've participated in various voter registration and advocacy festivals and events and so forth to raise awareness of the league's presence and what we do and what we advocate and so forth. I participated in lobbying our congressional Maryland representatives. The league has a league day on Capitol Hill where we go and meet with our senators and representatives or their designees. They can't all be available, but most of them are, to lobby them and let them know what we are advocating for the coming year. Also, I've been a polling place evaluator in both Ohio and Maryland. During the primaries and the general election, the league actually has a contract with the Board of Elections to evaluate the polling places. I have a 5-page questionnaire that I go through and make sure that all proper procedures are being followed. The polling judges are saying the right things and so forth. And I also help to develop and present presentations such as this with the help of Rosemary and a lot of other people. Jim?
All right. My primary function is voter services. It used to be voter services. We'd go out and register people to vote. However, you now live in Maryland, a very progressive state in many ways. When you sign up for your driver's license or make any change to it, you're automatically enrolled as a voter. You have to opt out not to be enrolled. So nowadays, concentration is we do voter forums for the elections. We try and get the candidates and get them in front of the people so the voters understand what they stand for and actually know the person that they're going to vote for. Rosemary?
I'll make mine short and sweet. I've been an active member of the League of Women Voters of Frederick County since 2016, and I'm a member of the board of directors. And until 2018, I was an election judge, gosh, for over 15 years. So I know the ins and outs of voting here in Frederick County.
Both of my co-presenters are far too modest. Rosemary is one of the most astute and intelligent editors I have ever met in my entire life. She can make letters to the editor and presentations look like silk purses out of Sal's ears. And Jim drove over, what, 5,000 miles? And almost 5,000 miles during the previous election.
To go to those crazy little boxes that were in the Urbana library and pick them up
the county,
carry ballots back to the Board of Elections office.
So we are very passionate about what we do.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and share a screen with you and get into the presentation.
Slideshow. Thank you. So here we are. In case you're not familiar with the League, we've been around for 100 years. We just celebrated our 100th anniversary, which coincided with women's suffrage, because the women were now won the right to vote through a lot of hard work and effort. So in order to know the candidates and what they stood for and the process of voting, somebody needed to help them, and that's where the League evolved. We encourage active and informed participation of citizens in the government. Our motto is empowering voters and defending democracy, and we actually take that extremely seriously. We are nonpartisan and nonprofit. By nonpartisan, I mean in Ohio, we were not even allowed to have bumper stickers for a candidate on our cars. But we have not, nor will we ever, advocate or endorse any candidate for any political position nor any party. We do, however, advocate and lobby for acts and laws that empower voters and help with our democracy, as our motto says. So why should you go and vote? As we know, the lines were long at times. The mail was obviously disrupted if you were trying to get mail-in ballots, etc. It was raining, it was snowing. Why do you want to go to all that effort? Because that is the only way you are going to make your voice, your opinion count. You can march in parades, you can write letters to the editor. I've done all of those things and they're all good things, and you should be involved in your community and let your community know what you support. But the only way you are going to make a difference is when you vote. When you vote for somebody that has the same sorts of beliefs and believes in the same things that you do, that is the only thing that is going to make a difference. People literally died to give you the right to vote and to ensure that you have the right to vote. That's not an exaggeration, that's a fact. Elections have consequences. We're very painfully aware of that, both locally and statewide and nationally. And if you don't vote, you don't have any say in what those consequences are. A little bit of information, since several of us are fairly new to the area, give you a little background of the way Frederick County has been voting. As of January of 2020, you can see the number of Democrats and the number of Republicans in black. And that's what, 16 difference in the number of Democrats and the number of Republicans. It is amazingly split at that time. And then there were approximately 44,000 unaffiliated or third-party voters. You can see by October of last year, things had changed rather significantly with the pandemic, with people beginning to really polarize their ideas. It was shifted more towards the Democratic side than the Republican side. So the moral of that story is that every vote makes a difference. In primary elections, it pains me to say that only 20% of registered voters in Maryland participate in primary elections. This is a travesty, in my opinion, because this is where you pick the people that are going to run in the general election. And if you don't vote in the primary election, it is possible for third party or more polarized, more radical people to then be elected in the primaries and be the representatives of your party in the general election. If only 20% of people vote, each vote is going to have a huge impact. That's why you need to vote, please, in the primary elections. Please understand that Maryland has a closed primary system for primary elections. So that means that if you are not registered as a party member of the Democrat, Republicans, or any of the third parties that have gathered enough signatures to be on the ballot, that you cannot vote unless it is for a nonpartisan issue or something like the Board of Elections, where the candidates are not politically aligned. That comes as an unpleasant surprise to a lot of people. And so I want you to be aware of that before the primary elections come around in 2022. So a little bit of trivia for you. As we said, there are over 42,000 unaffiliated voters in Frederick County. Now, you can't change your party affiliation at the polling place when you go to vote and then vote for your new party person. That's not allowed. You can, however, change it or your address or anything else at any time except 21 days before a primary or general election or 11 days after the primary or general election.
And just to be clear, at the polling place, you can change your party affiliation, but it'll take effect only for the next election.
Right. You can change it. You just can't then turn around and vote in that election for your new party. But you can vote in, as Rosemary said, in the next election for your new party. Every vote makes a difference. I cannot stress that enough. You have only to look historically in Mount Airy, for example. This year, there was a mayor's election, and the mayor was elected by a vote of 2 votes. So if you think about the 2018 election in Virginia, if you remember, that ended in a House of Delegate vote for 2 people of differing parties that was an exact tie. And so when that happens, what do? Well, the law says that you draw a lot, which in this case was putting names in a film canister and dropping them in a bowl, and somebody pulled out one of the canisters and read the name, and that was the person that was elected. Is that really the way you want your democracy to work? It seems a little random to me. And that one person that was elected tilted the power of that person's party in the House of Delegates for Virginia. So please don't let anyone ever tell you that one vote is not going to make a difference, because it does.
And you may be interested to know that the voter turnout in Frederick County for the 2020 presidential general election was just under 79%. So we've got a ways to go.
Even in very contentious and politically motivated times, why don't people vote? I don't understand. Anyway, how and where do you vote in Frederick County? Well, first you have to register. And as we said, when you get your driver's license or your photo ID issued by the state, you are automatically registered to vote unless you opt out. But let's say you didn't get a driver's license, or you moved within Maryland, or whatever. You can vote in person and register at the voting centers and at the general election polling places on the day of the election. Or you can make it easy on yourself and vote by mail. So if you need to update your registration with your new name or address or party, you can go online and do that. And as we said before, you can do that 21 days before and 11 days, except for 21 days before and 11 days after the primary and general elections. So for your information, in order to register to vote in Frederick County, Maryland, you must be at least 16 years old. You can register at 16, but you can't vote until you're at least 18 by the date of the next general or special election. You cannot be disqualified by Maryland state law. And of course, you have to be a resident of Frederick County and be a US citizen. So you can complete your voter registration form if you have not been automatically registered to vote at the Motor Vehicle Registration Center. And you can obtain that form online through the state's election website, maryland.us, or you can simply call 301-600-VOTE and request that an application be mailed to you. But if that isn't easy enough, or if you don't trust the mail, then you can pick it up yourself at the Motor Vehicle Administration offices, Board of Elections, all of these different places, your library, the post office, if you have one close by, public schools, etc. So once your application is completed, you're considered a registered voter once you receive your voter notification card. And you should get this within about 3 weeks after you submit your application. If you don't, or if you have any question about your voter registration application, call good old 301-600-VOTE. And you can also verify it by visiting the Voter Services website at elections.maryland.gov. So then you go and vote. Now, you may consider it bad news or good news, whichever way, but Urbana is not in Frederick City. And so you cannot vote in the primary or general elections that are being held in September and November of this year for the mayor and alderman. But pay attention to them, because obviously whoever's elected is going to impact the way life goes in all of Frederick County. So your next chance to really sink your teeth into voting will be in the gubernatorial elections. The primaries are in June, early voting, and then the primary election is in June, and then early voting for the governors and state officers are in October, and the gubernatorial general election is November the 8th, 2020. So circle that on your calendars and get ready, because they're already doing their political stuffs. Now, in order to understand candidate positions, I'm going to turn this over to my very learned associate, Rosemary, who has far more experience in this than I do.
I don't know if you've heard of this before, but the League of Women Voters has an online database called vote411.org, and it's brought to you by the League of Women Voters Educational Fund. Each state has its own part of that database, plus the District of Columbia also has a Vote 411. And what it is a collection of information about the candidates who are running, polling places that are available. What you do is you go to your state, you can select it from a pull down menu on the upper right-hand corner of the site. And then you can enter your zip code number, and up will pop the candidates who are running in your particular area. And it'll give you all the information that you need to know to vote, where you go to vote, etc. Now, for each election in Frederick County, the League of Women Voters for Frederick County invites all the candidates to participate in Vote 411. And what we do is we send every candidate for every race questions to answer. Candidates who choose to participate then go online and enter their answers themselves. We do not touch the answers. We do not edit them in any way. these Vote 411 provides the information directly from the candidates. Now, out of this electronic database, we provide a paper version called the Voter's Guide in conjunction with the Frederick News Post, and that's primary to both the primary and general elections. And in this Voter's Guide, we replicate the information, the candidates' answers to the queries, and we provide pictures of the candidates if the candidates have provided Vote 411 with pictures. You can also attend candidate forums, and Jim will speak to this in a minute, but I wanted to mention you could access individual candidates' websites for their positions and policy papers.
The only thing I think Rosemary forgot to mention, that each candidate gets the same question. In other words, the representatives get the same question, and they submit their answers, and they don't have the ability to see what their opponent said until after everything is closed and they're published. So this is one place where you get the candidate has to express his position or her position on a certain subject, and you're able to see that. Candidate forums are fun. They're a lot of work trying to get everybody there. Last year, we had set up forums in Fairfax City. We also had forums in libraries up at Thurmont and in Brunswick to try and give a full spectrum across the county. And the candidates accepted, and then along came COVID. So we ended up with online Zoom forums, which worked out fairly well. We did the Zoom, and then at the same time we live streamed to Facebook, and we were averaging well over 100 viewers for all the forums. The format is simple. The candidates do not see the questions before they're asked. We have a moderator who asks the questions. We normally ask each candidate as we go through 3 to 4 questions. Those questions are created by a group within the League of Women Voters, and they're vetted to make sure that they're appropriate and such. We also take questions from the audience, and those questions are then reviewed and vetted, and if we have time, those are asked of the candidates.
So why should you vote? Well, Thomas Jefferson said it best. You don't have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate, and that means voting. Rosemary, would you like to discuss some of the priorities for the League?
Sure. Our priority really is protecting the voting rights of all Americans. And right now, the National League of Women Voters supports protecting the voting rights by supporting passage of Senate Bill number 1, which is called For the People Act. And this bill would establish standards in federal law to protect voting rights of citizens across the nation. Because voting rules vary by state, this would provide basic standards that all states would have to meet. And among other provisions of the bill, the bill would expand voter registration and voting access. It would limit removing voters from voter databases, and it would require states to establish independent redistricting commissions. Now, this has been a particularly important issue for us. Jim, you can flip There we go. We wish to ensure that Maryland enacts a fair and nonpartisan redistricting process by creating an independent commission to define election districts. Now, I'm happy to say that this year in January, Governor Larry Hogan created such an independent commission. The commission comprises 9 members, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 3 independents or other party members. Now, what we would like to do is we're interested in preventing gerrymandering. Perhaps you've heard this phrase, perhaps you haven't, but it's a process by which the political party in power draws the lines of the election districts in such a way that it favors its party at the expense of other parties. Now, the League is against partisan and racial gerrymandering because it strips away the rights of voters. Your vote in a gerrymandered district does not always represent your geographic community or your county. Jim, can you flip?
I can. In a minute.
Sure. There we go. Now, the our local league is also interested. There's an effort on the local level here, on the city level, to make sure that city districts are not to make sure that the city districts represent fair and effective representation. And what we as a league want, look for is a substantially equal population in each district, geographic contiguity. In other words, have it more or less in one place, not spread hither and all over the place. And we want compact districts, and the districts are defined once every 10 years after receipt of census data. Now, this year, the census was delayed because of the lockdown, and we're expecting to get results by September 30th. So we're later than usual. Go ahead, Jim. Okay. I'd like to show you an example of a gerrymandered district, and that is the district in which I live, which is District 6 in green. This was created after the 2010 census. And if you'll notice, Frederick County, the green goes like a fist up into the center of the county. And then down in Montgomery County, you'll notice that the green captures the 2 biggest cities. Now, I'd like to show you the next slide, which would be a fairer representation, one that we would like to see. It's based on equal population and geographic contiguity. You'll see that all of Frederick County is part of District 6, and you'll see that District 8 has a nice compact geographic outlining. This particular version was created in 2019 by another attempt at an independent commission to create such fair maps, as it were. And these fair maps were presented to the state legislature, and unfortunately, the maps just died. Our politicians were not willing to make the decisions necessary to create such fair and what we consider to be fair and effective representation. So this is up to us to try to let our politicians know that we would like to see such fair and effective election districts. Now go to the next slide. Okay. So we want to avoid partisan, meaning, political party and racial gerrymandering that strips voting rights away from American citizens. This is our goal.
Thank you, Rosemary.
And don't we have, oh, yes, that's it. Thank you. Sorry.
You did a great job. Stop while you're ahead.
Exactly.
So this is how you can contact us, and email or the League of Women Voters of frederickcounty.org. We welcome your questions. We hope for your participation, and we would love to have you as members of our league, because as I stated previously, you will never meet a group of people that are more passionate, more nonpartisan, and our whole reason for being is to educate and empower voters and help ensure our democracy. So thank you very much. We'll now be able to take any questions you might have.
Stop the share.
Yep.
Okay, you can ask
Hit
away.
it.
Carol, you're muted. Carol, you're muted. Carol, unmute yourself.
I have to find it, yeah.
Okay.
There you
There you
go.
got it.
I moved here from Massachusetts 3.5 months ago, and I had to get an
Welcome.
appointment to get my license, which I applied for in February and didn't get until May 12th, but I am registered as a result of that adventure. And I was
Right.
quite thrilled to find that out, because I thought, well, that saves me another thing to do.
Exactly.
It was very good. But can you just briefly explain to me the Urbana, which is kind of physically where I think I live, and Frederick, which is my mail address, and Frederick, which now I know I can't vote for the mayor of Frederick. Can you just tell me that story?
Well, that's very interesting. We were discussing this before others came on with Ms. Collum, isn't it?
Callahan, yeah.
Callan, yes. And I frankly have absolutely no clue
Okay.
why that is the way
Well,
that it is.
I mean, Frederick City is a
Has
designated
defined
boundary.
boundaries, right?
They pay another tax that county residents do not pay. They pay a Fairfax City tax on above
Frederick City,
Frederick City, yeah,
yes.
on top of your state income tax. So
And on top of the county tax.
yeah.
And on top of the county.
pay
So
all
you're
three.
you're spared that. And again, I think Urbana is an up and growing area. And I think we were talking before, I think they're going to eventually have to deal with the area as an entity. But I mean, right now you're just like I am. You're in the county. You're in this. Well, you're probably in this. You're in the 6th district, while we're in the 8th district.
Yeah.
Is
Just
that
the way they
true?
drew the crazy lines.
And where do you go to vote here? In the library?
I go to vote. I vote in the library, but
In the
with the
Urbana
change-
library?
Vienna
Yeah.
library. But with the changes, I mean, that'll be always an early voting location. You've got the drop boxes if you were here and saw those. And then vote by mail has been made so easy. The only issue with the vote by mail is the smartest thing is not to place your return ballot in the mail, is to go put it in a drop box, because the mail in the last election was horribly slow. It just did not happen like it's supposed to. So do not put your ballot back in the mail. take it to the election polling place on election day if you want to go on election day. Otherwise, drop it in a drop box.
which would be at this library also.
At
They're
the-
throughout, in the past election, they were throughout the county.
Okay,
There was one at the Urbana Library, but they were located throughout the county, as my husband is painfully aware since he collected the ballots from the county. As we said, drove about 5,000 miles in the month before the election. But yeah, as witnessed by the fact that a package that I mailed 3 weeks before Christmas still has not been delivered.
well, the mail here, I live in the Woodlands and the mail here is horrible, so.
Oh, yeah, it is. That's, so the Dropbox, if you're in town doing shopping, you can drop it off at the Board of Elections or at one of the drop boxes throughout the city, but we try to make them as conveniently located as possible.
And the locations will be well publicized, and you can always go to the Board of Elections for the locations. You can also go to vote411.org to find out where you will be voting.
Well, thank
In the
you.
past election, because of the pandemic, instead of going to a designated polling place, which I think ours would have been Newmarket, for example, you could go to any of the polling places throughout the county if you happen to be traveling or wherever. You didn't have to go to a specific location.
Because where I came from and lived for 55 years, you had to go to a precinct. There was like a precinct, so.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's always the way it has been. But I don't know, like in Massachusetts, I know the Board of Elections over the past 2 or 3 elections have had trouble finding enough people to fill the positions of
Yeah, I'm
judges.
sure.
And so with the pandemic, they had to really scramble. So they came up with the extended vote by mail, the voting centers, extended early voting.
No, I think that helps people.
It does.
Uh,
Any
I
other
put-
question?
I put my question in the chat, but here it is. Will the Senate bill that you were mentioning for the People Act, will that address some of the issues of trying to restrict voter participation in states like Georgia and Texas and Alabama and places like that?
Well, what
will.
it'll do, it'll set standards, basic criteria that all states must meet.
Ah,
I haven't read the whole bill. It's very, very lengthy, but
Yeah.
I've read the summary written by the Congressional Research Service.
yeah,
You can go, if you Google Senate Bill number 1, you can
Right.
go to the site, you can read and get your specific questions answered.
yeah.
But
Because,
for example, I mean, I know it guarantees that you can't have one county with 1 polling place and another county with 6 polling places. Voters have to have equal access to voting opportunities.
yeah,
And also, for example, in Ohio, where we moved from, they did kick you off the voting rolls if you missed 2 elections.
oh,
And that could have been a primary and a general election of the same year. And so if you happen to be out of town or out of the country for 3 weeks, you could be kicked off the voting rolls. And so this would standardize
oh,
when you could take someone off the polls. For example, they
Yeah.
died,
Right.
that sort of thing.
how about age for eligibility for voting? Is that covered in that bill? Do you know?
No, as far as I know, that's still a state.
It is? Yeah,
As far as I know, I
Mhm.
haven't read the bill, but
right,
all the states have different rules.
right,
and I'm sure they intend to keep their different rules, but this Senate bill would try to make standards available for
Right.
everyone, regardless of which state they live in.
Right. I know felons, for example, can vote in certain states and not in others.
Right.
It's just the variation is really marked in terms of the different states. So I was just hopeful perhaps that bill might tend to standardize things. Great. Also, can you explain how you're in Iamsville area and you're in District 8 and we are in District 6? Is that what you?
Yes, yes. Well, that's that little pin that can wander all over the place and
Oh,
draw
okay.
that's gerrymandering at its best.
Okay, so District 6 is for the state delegates, right? I mean,
District 6 is a congressional district. You're
We're in 6
Trump.
for congressional.
David Trone is your representative.
Trone. But in Annapolis, is it Jesse Pippy or is it somebody else, or do you know?
I honestly don't know what the
Pepe,
state.
gosh,
I'll
Yeah.
look it up, I guess. But it's sort of, it's very disconcerting to be within Frederick, but not within Frederick. We are in Frederick County, but we have no rights to Frederick City. On the other hand, we pay a tax to Frederick City, living here in Urbana. There's some sort of a levy that they have placed on us.
That may be
Really?
true.
That may be
Yeah.
true. Huh, interesting.
A levy because of, Urbana, and they put a lot of sewers in and all of this. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, it has nothing to do with the League of Women Voters, but it's annoying not to know what our status is in terms of membership, so. Okay, anyway, that's the end of my questions. I'll leave it at that.
I wanted to make a comment. I got my voter notification card a couple days ago. And
Good
it
for
did
you.
Yes, I'm pleased. So, because I was confused as everybody else was. And it did say Congressional District 6, which would be
Oh.
David Trone.
Right.
And then it says LEG, which I assume stands for legislative, which I assume means maybe Maryland State Legislature.
Barely, yeah, Pepping.
404. So
Okay.
I guess we can
I
look
found
that
that,
up.
yeah,
Yep.
I found that very confusing when we first moved here as well.
Yeah.
that you were in one district for local and one for state and one for national. It was very confusing.
And then the
agree.
county is 001, whatever that is, so it probably means nothing. The polling place is Sugarloaf Elementary School
Okay.
Okay,
on Stone Barn Drive. I think it's in the new developments down
Right.
355, somewhere
yeah,
down
it
there.
is.
I'll take a drive down there.
It's
but-
around the corner from the fire station, not next to the fire station, but
Mm,
go past the fire station and take a left on that
okay,
road.
okay.
And the only reason I know that is my daughter's the teacher and the one that's next to the fire station.
Okay.
I evaluated that during the early voting as one of my polling places that I went to.
Mhm.
Well, you talked about the levy. It makes me think because Urbana has Frederick or county fire service, where in Iamsville, we have volunteer from Newmarket.
Oh,
So it's,
Well, we have volunteers too, I think.
yeah.
Even it says outside the fire station that it's a volunteer fire station. I think I read down on it and I got the impression that it had both some paid people and
Yeah.
volunteers.
it has
Well, we
some
cannot
paid
be-
folks, whereas like Newmarket has no paid folks.
Jeez.
Makes your head spin.
It does.
Especially somebody like who came from like Montgomery County. Montgomery County is sophisticated way beyond Frederick, where Frederick is catching up.
Well, I think to organize a sense of place, it would be helpful for people to know who their representatives are. You know, like Denise is saying, we're in one legislative 4 and District 6, which one is which. David Trone, I know, is ours. On the other hand, if you're across the street, it's Jamie Raskin. And if you're
Right.
2
Right.
streets over, I don't know who it is. But yeah, gerrymandering at its best. So yeah, it's something new to adjust to living in Urbana from wherever we came from, whether it's Ohio or New York or wherever. So
We're hopeful that we can get non-gerrymandered districts.
We certainly are trying our best at the
Yeah.
league to make that happen.
on the other hand, the proposed slide that you showed urban districts as well as very rural areas, putting those all together. So even though they're contiguous, they're not necessarily having the same interests either. So, you know,
That's true.
it'll be, anyway, I appreciate your lecture because it's at least it's sort of helpful putting things in perspective. Since, and oh, by the way, the last question I have is the mail. Do you believe that all elections should be by mail like it is in certain states? I know that all elections are vote by mail. I'm just curious.
Well, we don't take a position on that because that's up to the states.
Oh, okay. So the league doesn't take a position on that. Understood. Okay.
Yeah, we just care. All we really care is that you have the right to vote and you have fair access to voting in a timely fashion.
Understood. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, fortunately, Maryland is not like my home state of Mississippi, that if you want to vote by mail, you have to have a notarized statement that you are going to be out of the country or under anesthesia or something of that nature
Right.
in order to be able to vote by mail. So,
Yeah. That's a topic for another day. Eh?
It is,
indeed,
it is.
indeed.
Many conversations.
Okay.
Well, if there are no more questions, I certainly don't want to keep everybody. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you and get practice in. See, hopefully we'll be doing more and more of this.
But it was a pleasure to meet you. And I hope to see you at various festivals now that things are opening up again. We will have booths at, whenever we're allowed to have them.
Oh,
We'd love for you to stop in. We'd love for you to go to our website. There is information about how you can join the league, and we would absolutely love having you as members. I think you would be a great asset to us. You've got some interesting opinions and comments.
And the Board of Elections is always looking for people to work as election judges. So.
Well, thank you for sharing all this information. I found it extremely helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's what we hoped for.
thank you, everyone. We
Thank you.
appreciate
All right,
it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Everyone
a
have
good
a
evening.
great-
Stay safe. Stay out of the storms.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Have a good rest of Memorial Day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.